Gorilla can't stand up. When vet does ultrasound, he screams. What started as a routine zoo visit turned into a desperate race against time when one visitor noticed something terribly wrong with a beloved gorilla. Sarah wiped the sweat from her brow as she watched the gorilla through the reinforced glass. Something wasn't right. The magnificent creature, whom she'd visited dozens of times over the years, lay motionless on the concrete floor, her belly grotesquely swollen. Luna had been the pride of the zoo for over a decade, a gentle giant with soulful brown eyes that seemed to understand the children who pressed their faces against the glass to see her. But today, those eyes were dull, lifeless. The once playful western lowland gorilla hadn't moved in days. Sarah approached the nearest staff member, her voice urgent. "Excuse me, but that gorilla, Luna, she looks like she's in serious pain. How long has she been pregnant?" The keeper barely glanced up from his phone. "She's fine, just moody because of the baby. Please move along." But Sarah couldn't move along. She'd done her research. Gorilla pregnancies lasted around 8.5 months. Luna's belly had been swollen for nearly 11 months now. Something was desperately wrong. Over the next few days, more visitors raised concerns. Each time, staff dismissed them with the same rehearsed response. Luna became a tragic fixture in her enclosure, surrounded by rotting food, lying in her own waste, unable to stand. Then Marcus arrived. A wildlife advocate with a substantial online following, Marcus had heard whispers about Luna's condition. When he saw her in person, his stomach turned. The air in the enclosure was thick with the stench of decay. Flies buzzed around stagnant water. The gorilla's breathing was shallow, labored. "This is animal cruelty," Marcus said firmly to the keeper. "That animal needs immediate veterinary care. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Marcus didn't leave. He pulled out his phone and began documenting everything. Within hours, his posts had gone viral. Photos of Luna suffering spread across social media like wildfire. The public was outraged. How can they let her suffer like this? Where are the authorities? Someone help that poor animal. The zoo remained silent for 3 days while the pressure mounted. Finally, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a veterinarian with 15 years of experience treating large animals, decided she couldn't wait any longer. She drove to the zoo herself, equipment loaded in her van, determined to help Luna whether the zoo cooperated or not. When she arrived, she was turned away at the gate. "I'm sorry, ma'am, the zoo is closed to outside veterinarians." Elena's jaw tightened. That animal could be dying. "Our in-house vet says she's perfectly healthy." The standoff lasted until the police arrived, summoned by the growing crowd of protesters outside. Journalists had begun setting up cameras. The story was spreading beyond social media. It was becoming national news. Under mounting pressure, the zoo director finally relented. "Fine, but you'll see we're right. The gorilla is simply pregnant and temperamental." Elena grabbed her bag and followed the surly manager through the zoo's winding paths. But as they walked, she noticed something disturbing. Enclosures that had been full of animals in the viral photos were now mysteriously empty. They were moving animals, hiding evidence. Her heart pounded as she approached Luna's enclosure. The scene was worse than the photos suggested. Luna lay on her side, her breathing barely perceptible. Her once magnificent silver-black fur was matted and dull. The massive bulge of her abdomen seemed impossibly large, distorting her entire body shape. But it was her eyes that broke Elena's heart, vacant, resigned, waiting for death. "When was the last time she ate?" Elena asked, kneeling beside the suffering animal. A young keeper, visibly upset, spoke up. 4 days ago, maybe longer. The manager shot him a withering look. She's been eating just fine. She's simply overindulged, which is why she's lethargic. Elena turned sharply. That's a lie. Look at this enclosure. Where is your veterinarian? Why hasn't this animal received proper care? The manager's face flushed. You can examine her tomorrow. We need to coordinate with our head vet. Tomorrow could be too late. Tomorrow. That's final. Elena had no choice but to agree. She spent a sleepless night, her mind racing with possibilities. The next morning, she arrived at dawn, ultrasound equipment ready. The atmosphere had shifted. More animals had vanished overnight. The few remaining keepers looked nervous, avoiding eye contact. Elena's suspicions crystallized. This zoo was not just negligent, it was actively covering up its failures. She found the zoo's head veterinarian, a man whose white coat seemed more costume than professional attire. His eyes were cold, calculating. "There's no need to disturb the animal," he said flatly. "Luna is fine." "Then let me prove it," Elena challenged. "Let me do an ultrasound. If she's healthy and carrying a baby, I'll leave immediately and apologize publicly." The vet's expression hardened. After a long moment, he leaned closer, his voice dropping. "Listen, it's easier if we just put her down and get another one. Less work, less hassle." Elena felt her blood turn to ice. "What did you just say?" "You heard me. Why waste time and money on one gorilla when—" "Are you insane?" Elena's voice cracked with fury. "How can you call yourself a veterinarian?" Outside, the crowd had swelled. Protesters chanted. News vans lined the street. The pressure had become unbearable. The zoo director, panicked by the media circus, finally gave in. "Fine, examine the damn gorilla. Just get these people away from my zoo." Elena didn't waste another second. She suited up in protective gear and entered the enclosure, her heart hammering against her ribs. The other gorillas, Luna's companions, seemed to sense her intentions. They retreated to the far corner, watching with intelligent, hopeful eyes. Luna didn't move as Elena approached. The gorilla's breathing was shallow, irregular. Her skin felt clammy beneath Elena's gentle touch. The heartbeat was erratic, skipping and racing unpredictably. "I'm here, sweet girl," Elena whispered. "I'm going to help you." She powered on the portable ultrasound machine, spreading gel across Luna's massive, distended abdomen. The probe moved slowly across the swollen surface as Elena stared intently at the screen. At first, the images were murky, unclear. She adjusted the settings, moved the probe to different angles, wiped away excess gel, and tried again. Then she froze. "What the—" Elena's eyes widened. She moved the probe again, desperately hoping she was wrong. No heartbeat, no fetal movement. This isn't... She adjusted the contrast, zoomed in, and that's when she saw it clearly. "Oh my God!" Elena screamed, her voice echoing through the enclosure. "There's a massive foreign object. This isn't a pregnancy at all." Outside, the crowd fell silent. Every camera turned toward the enclosure. Elena's hands shook as she grabbed her phone, calling for emergency veterinary backup. Luna wasn't pregnant. She was dying from an intestinal blockage, probably had been suffering for months while the zoo ignored her deteriorating condition. "I need to operate immediately," Elena announced to the stunned crowd gathering at the enclosure windows. Her life depends on it. But operating on a fully grown gorilla in a dirty zoo enclosure was suicide for both of them. Elena needed to calculate the anesthesia perfectly, Too little, and Luna would wake during surgery. Too much, and her weakened heart would stop. Elena's assistant arrived within 20 minutes, bringing additional supplies. Together, they carefully measured and administered the sedative. Luna's breathing slowed to a peaceful rhythm as the medication took effect. The incision was precise, controlled. As Elena worked, she could hear the protesters outside, some praying, others crying, all of them filming this desperate attempt to save a life that should never have been in danger. 2 hours and 40 minutes later, Elena had removed kilograms of undigested food, waste, and debris from Luna's stomach. But the real problem was deeper. She needed better equipment, a sterile operating room. "Call for transport," Elena shouted. "We need to get her to my clinic now." The ambulance arrived swiftly. The crowd parted as Luna, sedated and stable but still critical, was carefully loaded onto a stretcher and rushed to Elena's veterinary hospital. In the sterile brightness of the operating room, Elena and her team worked with focused intensity. Perspiration dripped down their faces as they finally located the source of the blockage. There, wedged in Luna's intestinal tract, was a large piece of plastic wrap, roughly the size of a dinner plate. It appeared to be fruit packaging, carelessly left on food and fed to the gorilla. Luna had swallowed it, unable to distinguish it from her meal. The blockage had prevented anything from passing through her digestive system for months. Food had accumulated, waste had backed up, toxins had built up in her bloodstream. She'd been slowly dying while the zoo insisted she was just pregnant. Elena carefully extracted the plastic, then meticulously cleaned and repaired the damaged tissue. 3 hours after they'd begun, Luna's vital signs finally stabilized. As Elena stripped off her bloodied gloves, exhaustion and rage warred within her. The negligence was staggering, the cruelty unforgivable. The story exploded across every news outlet. Journalists camped outside Elena's clinic, desperate for updates on Luna's condition. The public demanded justice. Over the following weeks, Elena devoted herself to Luna's recovery. The gorilla's transformation was remarkable. Color returned to her eyes, her appetite came back. She began moving around, slowly at first, then with increasing confidence. Elena visited her every day, and Luna seemed to recognize her savior. The bond between them was palpable, a quiet understanding between two souls who had faced death together and won. Meanwhile, the legal system moved swiftly. The zoo's license was revoked. The owners faced criminal charges for animal cruelty and neglect. The remaining animals were transferred to accredited sanctuaries where they would receive proper care. Luna went to a gorilla rehabilitation center, where she'd eventually be introduced to a proper family group in a spacious, naturalistic habitat. Elena visited her there months later and barely recognized the vibrant, playful gorilla who bounded over to the fence to greet her. The gorilla who had been left to die in her own filth was now thriving, full of life and joy. As Elena watched Luna play with her new companions, tears streamed down her face. This was why she'd become a veterinarian. Not for the glory or the headlines, but for moments like this, when refusing to give up meant the difference between death and life. What would you have done in Elena's place? Would you have risked everything to save Luna? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe. It helps us continue sharing these incredible rescue stories. Thank you for caring about animals. See you in the next video.